Lin Chia's voice reached Qinyu's ears, and the latter's gaze fell on the crimson river water, his brows tightly furrowed. Process the river water. How should we process this? The blood of 3 condemned criminals had already merged with the river water. According to Qinyu's calculations, its concentration was enough to cause Baize's delivery to fail while simultaneously sending it into an absolute berserk state under the influence of emotions and blood. By then half of Huaihai would likely be razed to the ground. Qinyu's eyes stared intently at the churning river water below, his mind racing. A moment later, a flash of determination appeared in his eyes. No choice. Qinyu took a deep breath, removed his black-framed glasses, placed the black coffin on the deck behind him, and leaped into the air, diving straight into the blood-colored river water. In the churning water, the muscles on his back bulged, his upper clothing burst open, and a massive python head and a ferocious bull head grew from his 2 shoulders. All 3 mouths opened simultaneously, creating 3 terrifying vortices in the river water. The blood-colored river water poured frantically into Qinyu's body. He was like a greedy water-devouring monster, swallowing this blood-colored river flow at an astonishing speed. Qinyu's idea was simple and brutal. Unable to separate the blood from the water flow, he would swallow them all. What the hell? Bailey Pang watched this scene from a distance, his eyes widening in shock. That's possible? Qinyu. Ghost Jiang air floated out from the body of an ancient god church member, looking at the 3 terrifying vortices in the blood-colored water, her eyes filled with concern. At the bottom of the Huangpu River, the blood-colored river flow gradually submerged Baize, which was crawling on the riverbed. Tang Mingxian, standing guard in front of Baize, had an extremely grim expression. Baize. Tang Mingxian violently swung his crescent blade, rapidly compressing the surrounding blood-colored water flow to form a barrier, attempting to separate the water around Baize from the blood-colored flow. But even so, strands of blood-colored threads separated from the blood-colored river flow, like pythons that had smelled blood, frantically drilling into the pale golden patterns flickering on Baize's surface. This blood seemed to concentrate the resentment and greed of those death row inmates. The auspicious beast essence within Baize was what they desired most. Roar. As these blood-colored threads poured in, Baize's already agonized expression became increasingly ferocious. Low, hoarse roars echoed at the bottom of the river. It kept shaking its head, seemingly trying to drive the resentment and violence from its mind. Its pair of snow-white horns stirred in the river water, making the water flow surge toward the sky as if boiling. Baize's water control technique had become almost instinctive. The power released unconsciously in this violent state had already exceeded the Klein boundary level. The water flow shackles above it were instantly broken. Tang Mingxian violently spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his figure staggering back several steps on the riverbed. He could no longer suppress the Huangpu River that was approaching a berserk state. Boom! A deafening roar erupted from the bottom of the Huangpu River. Large volumes of water suddenly rushed into the sky, lost support in the air, turned into a torrential downpour, and poured back toward the entire city of Huaihai. Rain with a faint bloody smell slid across Lin Chia's cheek. His eyes stared intently at Yuehuai not far away, his expression extremely solemn. Unable to use mental power to sense, Lin Chia didn't know the situation at the Huangpu River, but now he could only choose to trust the other members of the Nightfall team. After a brief exchange, Lin Chia could confirm that Yuehuai's strength was definitely among the most troublesome Klein he had encountered so far. In a sense, even Bifayatu, ranked second among the 10 Imperial Guards in the mist, might not be his match. Yuehuai's mental power level was also at the peak of the Klein boundary, even extremely close to the human ceiling, but most crucially, his divine ruins were too bizarre. He seemed able to turn all real existing things into false shadows. Whether it was the glass tube passing through the sea beast, the flying knife bullets or the white slash that had just left his hand. A divine ruin that played with truth and falsehood at will. Which deity did Yuehuai represent? The rain soaked the cigarette burning at the corner of Yuehuai's mouth. He frowned slightly, spat out the smoke and stepped on it heavily. I know you're not Li Kengqiang, Yuehuai calmly spoke. Half a month ago I already fought with him. He wasn't as strong as you. So, the same question I have to ask you again. Who exactly are you? You don't need to know. Lin Chia reached out and white slash, which was stuck upside down in the ground, automatically flew back to his hand. Feeling the sense of a real object in his palm, Lin Chia's heart slightly steadied. It seemed that Yue Huai's ability to turn reality into falsehood was not eternal. But thinking about it, if he could wave his hand and permanently turn white slash into a shadow, that would be too overpowered. Lin Chia held white slash in his left hand, summoned the Aim no Murakumo sword in his right hand, and his figure transformed into a streak of night color, flying forward again. Yue Huai's eyes narrowed slightly, his figure rushing toward Lin Chia, a flash of black light passing through his eyes, showing no intention of dodging those two weapons. Thud. At the moment the two figures crossed, Lin Chia heavily stepped into a rain puddle, dense water droplets splashing in all directions. An invisible domain opened, instantly enveloping Yue Huai's figure. Terminal King's Law. Since it was a divine ruin, regardless of what ability it was, Terminal King's Law would always be effective. The facts proved this to be true. The moment this invisible domain opened, the black light in Yue Huai's eyes shattered. His pupils suddenly contracted, but even with his divine ruin countered, Yue Huai's reaction was extremely fast. His palm rapidly rose and two black shadows shot out from his palm. Clang clang. The two black shadows collided with the nearby white slash and Aim no Murakumo sword respectively. One black shadow touched the tip of the Aim no Murakumo sword and was instantly cut in half, while the other black shadow forcefully deflected the blade of white slash, hard creating an opening. Yue Huai's feet stepped in a strange pattern, his figure like a ghost, instantly floating hundreds of meters away, avoiding Lin Chia's surprise-killing move. However, even so, the blade light of white slash still ignored space, leaving a blood-colored slash mark on his back. Yue Huai's figure stood still in the rain, his eyes looking at Lin Chia with surprise and suspicion. His previously relaxed and casual expression completely disappeared, and he said in a deep voice, "What did you do?" Lin Chia didn't answer. His gaze fell on the black shadow at his feet, half of which had been cut off by the Aim no Murakumo sword. Previously, this black shadow moved too quickly for Lin Chia to see clearly what it was. Now he finally saw its complete appearance. It was half of a black lotus petal. Black lotus? What deity does this belong to? Lin Chia pondered for a moment but couldn't recall any related myths or legends, then turned his gaze back to Yue Huai. Torrential rain fell from the clouds, drenching them both. They stared at each other through the curtain of rain, and as a low roar emerged from the distant river, they both charged forward simultaneously. Rushing footsteps splashed through puddles as Final King's Law activated once more. A flash of sword light cut through the rain curtain, aiming straight for Yue Huai's throat. This time, Yue Huai knew Lin Chia had a method to counter his divine void and didn't let his guard down. His eyes focused intently on Lin Chia's movements, and the moment Lin raised his arm to swing the sword, Yue Huai responded. He quickly sidestepped the Aim no Murakumo sword's edge while a black lotus petal floated to his palm, which he then struck against Zhan Bai's blade. Clay. The lotus petal struck the blade of Zhan Bai, producing a piercing ring. The raindrops in midair were pushed away by the shockwave, creating a momentary vacuum zone. Seeing this, Lin Chia's heart sank. He realized Yue Huai had figured out the properties of his two weapons. The sword could cut through his lotus petals, so he could only dodge it rather than clash directly. The blade could wound him regardless of distance but wasn't as sharp as the sword, so it could be blocked with simple parries. Though their exchange was brief, Yue Huai had already discerned his fighting style and adapted accordingly. This proved that even setting aside his divine void abilities, Yue Huai's combat talent was frighteningly high. After deflecting Zhan Bai, Yue Huai stepped with that strange footwork, ghosting through the rain to appear behind Lin Chia. The black lotus petal held between his index and middle fingers became like a black short sword, stabbing lightning fast toward Lin Chia's heart from behind. Lin Chia's form transformed into a streak of night, instantly flickering away. When he reappeared, he was above Yue Huai, the Aim no Murakumo sword slicing through the air, aiming to split him in half from head to toe. A dark light suffused Yue Huai's eyes as his divine void broke free from Final King's Law. His gaze locked onto the descending blade, intending to turn it into a mere shadow of illusion, but the Aim no Murakumo sword flickered like a malfunctioning television, leaving only an afterimage before escaping his divine void and continuing its descent. His divine void had no effect on the Aim no Murakumo sword. In this critical moment, the ground beneath Yu Huai turned to shadow, and he quickly sank into the earth, narrowly avoiding the sword's strike. Moments later, Yu Huai emerged from the ground at a distance, looking at the sword with confusion. Since obtaining this divine void, this was the first time he'd encountered an object he couldn't falsify. Of course, he didn't know that the Aim no Murakumo sword was a genuine supreme, divine artifact, its rank far above Yu Huai's current level, naturally immune to his divine void's influence. Lin Chia stepped on the ground that had returned to its solid state, narrowing his eyes. Yu Huai's spiritual realm was slightly higher than his own. Although Final King's Law could counter the opponent's divine void, it only worked momentarily. This meant that in each exchange he only had an instant to attack. Once the counter effect ended, Yu Huai could falsify any threatening attacks and gain the upper hand. If not for the Aim no Murakumo sword, even with Final King's Law, he might not have been able to gain any advantage against Yu Huai. In the pouring rain, the two men watched each other vigilantly, muscles tense. Just as they were about to engage again, a shrill roar came from the distant Huangpu River. Yu Huai immediately steadied himself, glancing in that direction with furrowed brows as if contemplating. Lin Chia's strength far exceeded his expectations. Whether it was the unknown power that could suppress his divine void or that sword from who knows where, both strongly countered his abilities. If they continued fighting, he might not come out ahead. He still had many things to accomplish, and if he died or was seriously injured by this young man, it would be a major setback. After a moment, Yu Huai put away the black lotus petal in his palm and spoke coldly. "Let's end it here for today. You'd better think about how to deal with that big fellow over there." As his words fell, a dark light once again colored Yu Huai's eyes, and his form instantly sank into the ground, disappearing from Lin Chia's sight. Seeing Yu Huai escape, Lin Chia hesitated briefly but decided not to pursue. After all, the urgent matter wasn't hunting down the ancient god church, but saving the entire Huaihai city from the rampaging beys. Lin Chia turned to look at the water spout rising from the Huangpu River into the clouds. His brows tightly furrowed as he transformed into a streak of night, breaking through the rain curtain and rushing away. In the churning river water, Three-Headed and Qingyu frantically devoured the blood-colored domain. As the three vortexes continued to spin, the water level began to drop at a visible rate. The spread of this violent blood in the water flow couldn't match his devouring speed. With Qingyu's efforts, the blood-colored water surrounding bays rapidly shrank and finally disappeared completely. The two heads behind Qingyu receded into his skin. Bare-chested, he staggered to the shore, weakly leaning against the railing, gasping for breath. Ugh! Qingyu's mouth twitched as he couldn't help but retch. Qingyu roughly estimated that he had just swallowed at least 10 tons of river water. Although the water hadn't actually entered his stomach, the putrid taste flooding his throat still made him suffer terribly. "Qingyu, are you all right?" Jiang Er floated to the shore and asked anxiously. "I'm fine," and Qingyu waved his hand, put on his glasses, and looked toward the giant shadow faintly visible at the bottom of the river. "I just swallowed at least 2/3 of the violent blood. The remaining third has probably been absorbed by bays. Although that amount shouldn't cause complete loss of control, however." And Qingyu didn't finish the second half of his sentence. He sighed and fell silent. The rain fell on the churning river water. The giant shadow crouching at the river bottom twisted in pain, and piercing howls penetrated the water flow, echoing along both sides of the shore. "Bays." Tang Mingxian gripped his Ji halberd tightly, standing like a stabilizing pillar at the bottom of the Huangpu River. His form swayed with the rapid currents, his face already deathly pale. "Stay conscious, Bays. Don't let those things interfere with your mind." Bays raised its head with difficulty. Those jade-like eyes were filled with pain and struggle as its voice echoed in Tang Mingxuan's ears. "Captain Tang Mingxian, don't forget our agreement." It glanced at the golden light gradually forming in its embrace, and tenderness welled up in the depths of its eyes. "I don't matter. No matter what, please protect my child." Hearing these familiar words, Tang Mingxian stood frozen in place, as if struck by lightning. In a daze, The voice he had hidden in the deepest part of his heart surged to his ears once again. Mingxian. I'm not going to make it. Mingxian. Don't yell at those doctors, this isn't their fault. My mother died in childbirth too. Perhaps this is fate. The doctor says I gave birth to a girl. What do you think would be a good name for her? Don't cry, a grown man sobbing like this, what kind of image is that? Mingxian, you must take good care of her. From now on she will accompany you in my place. Tang Mingxuan's fists clenched tightly, his eyes bloodshot. Bei's form trembled continuously, the pale golden patterns on its skin beginning to be stained with blood. The water around its body swirled into a vortex, shooting straight from the river bottom to the sky. This blood followed the patterns, gradually moving toward the child it was delivering. Roar. Bei's let out a howl, the pale golden patterns on its body suddenly brightening. A sacred, auspicious energy rushed into its lower abdomen, while its own body gradually withered and died under the blood's corruption. It desperately poured its pure bloodline into the fetus, trying to push away the violent, frenzied blood energy. If the fragile fetus came into contact with them, death would be almost certain. Even if it miraculously survived, violence and bloodthirst would become imprinted in its very bones. No matter what, Bei's did not want its child to become a beastly monster. So even if it meant its own downfall, it absolutely could not let these filthy things touch its child in the slightest. The pale golden light surged wildly. Under Bei's desperate effort, the ball of light nurtured beneath it grew increasingly brilliant. Moments later, a weak but clear infant's cry appeared in the rushing river water. Bei's roared, its tail wrapped around the golden ball of light and flung it with force. The streaming light broke through the water flow, landing precisely in front of Tang Mingxian. Tang Mingxian forcefully thrust his halberd into the riverbed and steadily caught the ball of light with both hands. Within the pale golden radiance was a basketball-sized white cub, adorably moving its 4 little paws. Before Tang Mingxian could observe carefully, a tremendous noise came from in front of him, and a heavy surge of water violently knocked him back. He instinctively wrapped his arms around the cub protectively as his body was blasted from the river like a cannonball. His back slammed into the embankment, sending stones flying as his form was nearly embedded in the wall. Crimson blood seeped from Tang Mingxuan's mouth. His first action was to look down and check the cub's condition. Fortunately, his body had cushioned the impact and the cub was unharmed. Its round eyes were curiously examining Tang Mingxian. Seeing the cub was safe, Tang Mingxian sighed slightly in relief. He looked up toward the front, where a massive white beast figure had burst from the river surface, standing in midair as if treading on nothing. The pouring rain soaked its fur and its glass-like eyes had been stained blood-red. Roar. With Bei's angry howl, the raindrops in midair shook apart. Its face looked somewhat ferocious. Bei's. Tang Mingxian staggered to the ground, his gaze toward the white beast figure incredibly complex. Bei's had poured its sacred energy into the fetus, causing its own condition to plummet. The violent blood energy had seized the opportunity to invade its consciousness. This divine beast, which in great Xia legends symbolized peace and good fortune, had finally fallen into a rampage. Lin Qi's figure flew from the distance, landing on the flooded street. He looked at the howling white giant shadow in the sky, his expression extremely grave. How is it? He turned to ask Qingyu beside him. It's bad, and Qingyu pushed up his glasses and said solemnly. Although it successfully gave birth, the violent energy has entered its spirit. It has fallen. Is there any possibility of recovery? And Qingyu thought carefully for a moment. Hard to say. If it had been the original amount from all 3 vials of blood, not only would it have failed to deliver successfully, but it would have completely lost its mind. However, after I swallowed 2/3 of the river water, the pollution has been significantly reduced. Whether it can recover or not, I can't say for sure. We can only leave it to fate. With Bei's roars, massive waves surged from the river, violently striking the streets on both banks. In just moments, half of the bund was submerged. Heavy rain poured from the sky, misty vapors rose, obscuring visibility in a white haze. The entire Huaihai seemed to be shrouded in water, and the water level on the city streets began to rise at an alarming rate. We can't let it continue like this, Lin Qie said seriously. 4 bays creating floods and tsunamis in the city is no difficult feat if it develops to that point. The casualties in Huaihai City could number in the tens of thousands. Understood. Chao Yuan stood on the shore, placing his already water-soaked radio by his feet, his right hand resting on the hilt of his waist sword. Clang. A crisp sword sound rang out, black murderous flame energy soared to the sky, and a grinning shadow leaped from the shore like a lightning bolt toward the divine beast bays in the sky. Hee. The murderous blade energy cut through the rain, but before it could touch Baze's skin, a burst of divine light exploded around the beast. It flashed across the sky like a meteor, its pair of pure white horns colliding with the blade's edge, releasing a terrifying force. Even in its weakened state, Baze was still a divine beast. Under its head-on collision, even Chao Yuan in his frenzied state couldn't withstand its power. He fell from the sky like a cannonball, crashing into the churning river. At the same time, another figure flashed through the rain curtain, standing directly in the air above Baze. A massive black and white taiji diagram opened in the sky. Bai Li Fati reached down with his 5 fingers and 2 hexagrams lit up in succession. Sun wind Shin thunder. Crack. The formless wind bound Baze's 4 limbs like ropes, followed by a thick bolt of lightning striking down from the center of the taiji diagram. Baze growled, raising the horns on its head. The surging lightning poured into them, traveling along its skin surface. The next moment the lightning reversed course between its horns, shooting toward the streets on the shore. Just as the lightning was about to engulf the city, Lin Chia's figure emerged from the night. He pressed his hand in the void and Final King's Law instantly neutralized the lightning, turning it into countless electric arcs dancing in the rain. Its horns can absorb and reflect damage. Everyone be careful, Lin Chia said solemnly. He took a deep breath and misty magical light rippled out from within his body. As the earth trembled slightly, the black tire marks scattered throughout the streets lit up one after another, weaving into a giant magic array several kilometers in radius, with Lin Chia standing at its center. Forbidden spell. Black sun ritual. Mountain Valley. As Lin Chia's chanting voice rose, strands of deep red magical light floated up from the patterns on the ground, converging toward the sky, gradually evolving into a black sun hundreds of meters high, suspended beneath the firmament. A world-destroying magical aura emanated from this black sun, and the previously bright sky visibly dimmed. Hot breezes swept across the island, large flocks of birds flapped their wings and flew into the sky, as if fearing something. The commanders observing near the valley twitched their lips slightly at this sight. Summoning magic, the essence of night, the Kusanagi sword, a divine artifact that can counter forbidden relics, a long blade that ignores distance, and now a black sun. How many trump cards does this kid have? Wang Qing couldn't help but speak as she gazed at Lin Chia with his clothes fluttering beneath the black sun. His existence is entangled with great karma, so naturally he wouldn't lack opportunities, said Gong Yangwan, her beautiful eyes fixed on Lin Chia, speaking casually. However, no matter how much he relies on external objects, they only add icing on the cake. He will eventually have to walk that path. So, should we stop him? Wang Qing pointed at the ground beneath them. If we really let him fight all out, I'm afraid this entire island will suffer. It's just a preliminary assessment training, it shouldn't go this far, right? No need. Nie Jinshan slowly stood up, his tall figure like a pine tree standing firm in the wind, and said calmly, "Let him continue. With me here, this island won't be destroyed." Nie Jinshan took a step forward and appeared in the center of the valley in the next moment. He reached out and grasped at the void, and the top of a distant mountain peak suddenly exploded. A black shadow hauled across the sky and landed precisely in front of him. Boom. The ground of the valley cracked inch by inch. A black staff, like the upright figure wearing a Zhongshan suit, stood firmly in the billowing dust. Nie Jinshan gripped the black staff with one hand, keeping his other hand behind his waist, and looked up at the fiercely burning black sun in the sky, his eyes as calm as still water. Inside the virtual reconstruction world, Lin Chia's chanting became increasingly urgent, and the array's light in the valley shone brilliantly, reaching its peak intensity. As the last syllable fell, the surface of the black sun hanging high in the sky suddenly contracted, and a ferocious deep red vertical eye opened, emitting an eerie red light. He raised his arm and pointed toward the distant void. Boom! A deep red beam burst forth from the vertical eye, instantly tearing through the void and shooting toward the ground of the valley. Nie Jinshan's eyes focused, his figure instantly leaving afterimages on the ground, moving at a speed close to teleportation to the front of the deep red beam. The muscles of his right arm bulged and the black staff broke through the air, colliding with the beam without any flourish. A muffled explosion echoed through the valley and visible deep red ripples spread out. The ground beneath Nie Jinshan's feet shattered and he sank half a meter. The terrifying energy extended from the staff to Nie Jinshan's entire body, but his figure remained standing firm with his hand behind his back, only his expression becoming slightly more solemn. He grunted, and with a steady flick of the black staff, the beam was forcibly deflected at a sharp angle from the ground, howling as it shot toward the sky. The world-destroying black sun beam, erupting from the island over the sea, shot straight into the clouds. This wasn't over yet. Beneath the black sun, Lin Chia frowned slightly, and as his eyes swept across what was before him, one deep red beam after another burst forth. Nie Jinshan stomped the ground fiercely, precisely flicking each deep red beam into the sky with his staff before it could hit the ground, his afterimages almost covering every corner of the valley. The succession of deep red beams shooting into the clouds cast a faint red glow on the faces of Wang Qing and the others. Looking at the figure wielding the staff with one hand, she sighed deeply. Already a heroic spirit, yet still competing with young people, what's the point? Huaihai City. Several deep red beams shot out from the black sun, continuously locking onto Bei's position. A grinning black shadow darted out from the river, and the blade aura of killing intent surged again. The berserk Chao Yuan's figure moved freely through the dense deep red beams, catching up to Bei's who was within reach. The blade aura cut through the rain curtain, slashing across the pure white skin, leaving a bloody mark on Bei's back. Bei's roared in anger and was about to turn around when countless frost-carrying threads entangled its limbs and horns. And Qingyu stood in midair carrying a black coffin, his hands tightly gripping the threads, a pair of earth dragon wings breaking through his back, howling as they flapped, barely restraining Bei's form. Extreme cold frost spread over Bei's body through the threads, gradually slowing its movements. The berserk Chao Yuan, holding his straight blade, nimbly avoided several attacks and slashed out again with a backhand. Its condition is deteriorating. Don't deliver fatal blows, just try to restrain it. Perhaps it still has a chance to recover. Lin Chia spoke solemnly as he saw the bloody marks increasing on Bei's body. The berserk Chao Yuan seemed to understand Lin Chia's words and flipped his blade, starting to fight and maneuver with the back of the blade against Bei's. Frost rapidly accumulated in Qinyu's hands, flowing into Bei's body through the threads like a persistent parasite, freezing its body bit by bit. Even though Bei's constantly cut the threads with its horns, endless threads continued to entangle it, making it impossible to completely break free. With the addition of Bai Li Pongpong's restraint from the sky and Lin Chia's Black Sun ritual, as the main damage output locking down movement, Bei's was like stepping into a quagmire sinking deeper and deeper. On the ground, Tang Mingxian, holding the young beast, was sprinting on the water-filled streets. With Bei's being restrained by Lin Chia and the others, the surging river water had weakened somewhat, but even so the water on both sides of the street had already risen above knee level. If Tang Mingxian couldn't walk on water, he would likely be unable to move at all. Just then, the young beast sleeping in Tang Mingxuan's arms slowly opened its eyes, blinking in confusion, and a clear infant's cry cut through the rain curtain. Jia. As this penetrating sound rang out, the heavy rain falling from the sky suddenly paused. Bei's, surrounded by Lin Chia and the others, abruptly raised its head, and a struggle appeared in its blood-red eyes. It roared with all its might, brilliant divine light erupted, instantly cutting off the frost threads entangled by Qingyu. With a flick of its horns, it knocked the berserk Chao Yuan into midair and frantically charged toward the direction from which the sound came by the river. The river water instantly churned and water spouts that curled into the clouds followed behind it, like a vast tsunami, sweeping toward Huaihai City. Its chaotic consciousness is loosening. Qingyu exclaimed upon seeing this. Lin Chia looked at the overwhelming river water, a flash of determination in his eyes. His figure darted out from the magic array, flickering and disappearing in the air, instantly appearing above the rampaging Baze. He firmly grasped Baze's horns with his hands, landing on Baze's back in the fierce wind, and suddenly exerted force with both hands, trying to change Baze's direction of advance. Sensing someone riding on its back, Baze instinctively shook its head, trying to throw Lin Chia off, but Lin Chia's hands were gripping tightly with no intention of letting go. In the storm, the patterns on Baze's body gradually lit up, surging divine power burning Lin Chia's hands. His brows furrowed, black hair dampened by rain hanging at his temples, a hint of purple climbing into his eyes. Tyrant's rage. The domineering, kingly pressure released from Baze's back. Its body trembled slightly, and under the terrifying pressure, its speed gradually slowed down. Baze's blood-red eyes opened wide in anger, letting out a low growl. Divine power continuously struck at Lin Chia behind it, struggling fiercely under the kingly pressure, stubbornly continuing to charge toward the shore of Huaihai City. As Baze's limbs crossed through nothingness, the churning water behind it resembled a tsunami, connecting with the gloomy sky, surging toward the bustling urban area like an overwhelming tide. Cries of alarm spread from the streets as pedestrians began frantically fleeing in all directions. Baze, red-eyed, seemed to be searching for the infant's cry it had heard earlier. Just as it was about to enter the urban area, a clear song rang out from behind it. The big windmill turns creaking and squeaking. The moment this song echoed in the sky, Baze's footsteps halted, freezing in midair. Not just Baze but Bai Li Pangpang, Chao Yuan and others on the ground, as well as the many commanders observing from the valley, all froze in place. Who's singing? Bai Li Pangpang stood in the rain, and because Lin Chia and Baze were positioned so high, he couldn't clearly hear where the sound was coming from. It seems to be Chia, and Qingyu perked up his ears, carefully discerning the direction of the sound, speaking uncertainly. High in the sky, Lin Chia forced himself to continue, striving to maintain the musical rhythm and melody. The scenery here is so beautiful. The sky is beautiful, the earth is beautiful, and there are happy little companions. In this strange song, Baze's blood-red eyes gradually became unfocused. Its emotions already out of control under the shock of Tyrant's rage, its mind had been compromised. It felt a mysterious force flowing from the song, beginning to control its body. Before everyone's eyes, Baze suddenly made a sharp turn in the air, carrying the massive waves behind it, and flew straight in a direction away from the urban area. A streak of light crossed the sky, and faintly the strange song echoed in the heavy rain. The big windmill turns creaking and squeaking. Lin Chia gripped Baze's horns tightly with both hands to prevent himself from being thrown off by the excessive speed, while calmly beginning to sing the second verse. Beads of sweat seeped from his forehead, mixing with rainwater as they ran down his cheeks. Even with its mind compromised, Baze was still a divine beast. The soul control song could only control it for a very limited time. Lin Chia had to move it as far away as possible in the shortest time, while ensuring he didn't go off-key during the high-speed journey. This was an enormous challenge for him. Baze's form streaked across the sky. At the edge of the horizon, pale cyan aurora fell from the clouds, and beyond the aurora was nothingness. The sky is beautiful, the earth is beautiful, and there are together. Pooh. Before Lin Chia could finish singing, his face turned pale, and he violently spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His eyes revealed unprecedented exhaustion. Baze's soul broke free from his control, and the powerful backlash directly struck Lin Chia's mind. He felt a buzzing in his ears, and even his consciousness became blurry. Although soul control song was powerful, its side effects after losing control were equally formidable. Baze's unfocused eyes gradually recovered. It looked at the approaching boundary ahead, falling into momentary confusion. How did it get here? Lin Chia gritted his teeth, struggling to maintain consciousness, tightly gripping Baze's horns as a golden domain expanded beneath him. Baze had already escaped his control. If it rushed back to the urban area, there would be no choice but to kill it on the spot. Rather than that, why not take one last gamble? The fact that the rampaging Baze could respond to a cub's cry indicated that its consciousness still had room for recovery. If that was the case, he would give it a chance to create a miracle. As mortal divine domain expanded, Lin Chia struggled to open his eyes and look ahead. The aurora enveloping the edge of Huaihai City gradually enlarged before him. Roar. Within the golden domain, a struggle appeared in Bei's blood-colored eyes. It let out a low growl and, carrying Lin Chia, plunged headlong into the aurora. With a flash of light, the forms of Lin Chia and Bei's instantly vanished from this world. Lin Chia, with blurred consciousness, felt everything around him suddenly fall into dead silence. The rain, Bei's, the cries from the city, the rolling river water. Everything rapidly receded. He felt as if he had crashed into an incredibly soft sponge, his entire body relaxing. The hazy aurora flickered in his eyes as his consciousness gradually sank into chaos. In endless darkness, Lin Chia's consciousness continued to fall. This soul-deep sensation of weightlessness gave Lin Chia a strange unease. But oddly, it wasn't unfamiliar to him, as if he had experienced it before. Darkness, chaos, nothingness, emptiness all around. Lin Chia felt his head aching severely. He had forgotten why he was here and didn't know where he was heading. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. "Who are you?" Lin Chia's chaotic mind suddenly cleared. His weightless consciousness seemed to land on solid ground, stopping its descent. He quickly turned around to see a 6 or 7-year-old child standing in the darkness, frowning at him. Seeing that face so similar to his own, Lin Chia was slightly stunned, feeling as if this scene had occurred before. "I am." Before Lin Chia could finish, the child spoke again. "It's you again." Those deep, lightless eyes stared at Lin Chia like an abyss. "You have seen me before?" Lin Chia shook his aching head and tentatively asked. "You've been here before." The child paused. "But you shouldn't have come." "Who are you?" "I am Lin Chia." These words fell on Lin Chia's ears like a thunderclap. He was stunned for a long while before speaking somewhat deliriously. "You are Lin Chia. Then who am I?" The child didn't answer. He just silently stared at Lin Chia, about to say something when he squinted up at the pitch-black void above. "You should go now." As soon as these words were spoken, before Lin Chia could understand their meaning, his consciousness was pulled by some force, beginning to float upward again. The chaotic, dark world gradually receded. That familiar pale cyan aurora brushed past his body. He felt a spinning sensation and a ray of light rapidly expanded before his eyes. "Mother!" His whisper was swallowed by the sound of waves crashing against the shore. 2 streams of tears rolled down his cheeks, merging with the white spray. After an unknown amount of time, he let out a long sigh. His figure slowly rose from the reef, took a step forward and disappeared into the waves. 7 nights. 7 nights. In the devastated valley, Bailey Pang Pang and the others gathered around the unconscious Lin Chia, calling out anxiously. "Gun brother, what's wrong with 7 nights?" And Qingyu turned to look at Li Qingqiang, who was walking quickly toward them, and asked seriously. Li Qingqiang looked at the unconscious Lin Chia, his expression grave as he spoke. "This kid. I told him not to run beyond the boundary. Why was he still so reckless? What exactly is beyond the boundary?" Li Qingqiang pondered for a moment. "Let me put it this way, my virtual reconstruction projects my memories into your consciousness, allowing your consciousness to move freely within it. But human consciousness is extremely complex. Once you cross the boundary, it means breaking through the safety line I set for you and directly entering the marginal area of consciousness. If you enter that place, getting out isn't so easy." "The marginal area of consciousness?" And Qingyu frowned and asked, "What would be the consequences?" Li Qingqiang gave Lin Chia a complicated look. "If luck isn't on your side, you might become a vegetative person." Hearing this, Bailey Pang Pang and the others felt their hearts sink. And Qingyu's frown deepened. Gritting his teeth, he pulled out a set of surgical instruments from his pocket and walked directly toward the unconscious Lin Chia. "What are you doing?" Li Qingqiang asked puzzledly. "I have some knowledge of brain structure. I want to try opening his skull, maybe I can wake him up," and Qingyu said firmly. Chao Yuan, who had just returned from his frenzied state, twitched the corner of his mouth and tentatively said, "Qingyu, maybe you should reconsider?" Just as Qingyu was about to say something more, the unconscious Lin Chia suddenly opened his eyes and sat up abruptly from the ground, breathing heavily like a drowning person, his face slightly pale. Lin Chia's sudden awakening startled everyone, followed by expressions of joy. "Qingyu, your method really works." 7 Nights was scared awake. Bailey Pang Pang began to applaud. And Qingyu, 7 nights, are you all right? Jiang Er floated in front of him, asking with concern. Lin Chia shook his heavy head. After a long while, he finally spoke hoarsely. I seem to have had a dream, but I can't remember what it was about. It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back. Li Qingqiang finally breathed a sigh of relief. If Lin Chia had really fallen into an eternal sleep because of virtual reconstruction, he wouldn't know how to explain it to General Hua. Lin Chia took a moment to recover, his gaze sweeping across the surroundings. How did we get back? Is the world of virtual reconstruction over? It's over. Returning to this topic, Li Qingqiang looked at them with complex emotions. Huaihai City was spared from disaster. White Marsh successfully gave birth and returned to normal from its berserk state. You all did excellently. Li Qingqiang paused, turned to look at the eastern side of the island and let out a long sigh. If only we could have been like you back then, how wonderful that would have been. The night grew deeper. Lin Chia lay on the soft bed, staring blankly at the ceiling above. Today's training, although only an hour long, left Lin Chia and the others feeling unprecedentedly exhausted. Therefore, after the virtual reconstruction ended, Li Qingqiang simply waved his hand and told them to return to their rooms to rest, with training to resume tomorrow. But Lin Chia, lying in bed tossing and turning, couldn't fall asleep no matter what. When he closed his eyes, his mind would fill with images of the scarred Bai Zai and Tang Mingxian with his bitter resignation. From what others had told him, Lin Chia knew that after he entered the Aurora boundary, Bai Zai had returned to normal and went back to Huaihai City to stop the flood from spreading. The outcome was quite satisfactory, but this was, after all, just a world virtually reconstructed by Li Qingqiang. In the real Huaihai City of that year, what was the actual result of this incident? Also, what exactly happened after he entered the Aurora boundary? He felt like he had forgotten something very strange, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't remember. Lin Chia lay in bed for a long time before finally sighing and getting up. After walking out of the air raid shelter, he discovered that Bailey Pang Pang and Qin Yu and Jiang Er were also outside, gathered around a burning bonfire, busily working. Chia, you're awake. Bailey Pang Pang stood up and pulled out another small stool, placing it beside himself, gesturing for Lin Chia to sit down. Lin Chia looked around. Where's Chao Yuan? He went into the forest to hunt. Bailey Pang Pang shrugged and said, the commanders didn't arrange meals for us and I only brought so many ingredients. After all the effort we put in today, shouldn't we get some wild game to improve our dinner? Lin Chia sat down on the small stool, slightly surprised. Wild game? Just as they were talking, Chao Yuan walked out of the dim forest, looking somewhat dejected. Seeing Chao Yuan empty-handed, Bailey Pang Pang asked in surprise, Old Chao, seriously? As a mighty Klein-level powerhouse, you couldn't even catch a single piece of game. A Klein is still a Klein after all. Even without using his forbidden domain, relying purely on speed and strength, Chao Yuan should be able to handle not just wild game but could even knock out a rhinoceros with his bare hands. Chao Yuan returning empty-handed was something Bailey Pang Pang never expected. It's not a question of whether I can catch anything or not, Chao Yuan shook his head. I've scouted half the island and didn't even see a single rat, let alone any wild game. None. Indeed, there's none, Lin Chia added from the side. When we arrived on the island, I already scanned with my mental power. There are no wild creatures on this island, and even in the surrounding sea, there are no living beings within 5 kilometers. Tiske, what kind of place is this? Not even anything to eat. Just as Bailey Pang Pang was complaining, a voice drifted over from the distance. This is the dragon's eye of the great Xia dragon vein. No wild creatures can exist here, otherwise, nourished by the national fortune of Great Xia, they would become abnormally powerful. Lin Chia and the others turned to look and saw Li Qingqiang, dressed in a floral shirt, dragging a nearly 2-meter-long large sea fish, walking unhurriedly toward them. Jiang Er was startled. Then what you have in your hand is... Oh, this was caught from another sea area. Someone made a special trip for you all and asked me to bring it over as a thank you gift. Li Qingqiang placed the exaggeratedly large fish on the ground, marveling, such a big fish, I've never seen one like this in my life. You guys are in for a treat. A thank you gift? From whom? Lin Chia asked curiously. That is a secret for now, Li Qingqiang smiled mysteriously. And Qingyu took the fish and with flashes of knife light, quickly dismembered it, skewered it on the grill and began preparing dinner. Come, gun brother, join us for a meal. Bailey Pang Pang smiled and handed over a small stool. Li Kengqiang sat down naturally. I'm in spirit form now, even if I eat I can only have a little. I'll just taste it. As Qingyu placed the fish on the grill and added seasonings, a rich aroma spread through the dim clearing. Gun brother, I want to ask a question. Lin Chia hesitated for a moment before speaking. You want to know what the actual outcome of the Huaihai City disaster was back then? Li Kengqiang seemed to have anticipated Lin Chia's question. Lin Chia nodded and the rest of the Nightfall team members also perked up their ears. Li Kengqiang was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply and said, back then when our team discovered this disaster, it was already somewhat late. Although we killed almost all the ancient God Church members in Huaihai City, Yu Huai, who had been undercover in Squad 007 for nearly 2 years, still shattered all our plans. Yu Huai completely polluted Bai Zhe with the blood of rage, slaughtered the members of Squad 007, and single-handedly orchestrated the Huaihai City disaster. Lin Chia and the others exchanged glances. Then how did you resolve it in the end? Our team paid the price of 1 life to drive away Yu Huai, then surrounded the berserk Bai Zhe, gradually wearing down its strength. Finally, Squad 007 Captain Tang Mingxian, seizing the moment of its weakness, killed it with his own hands. The air fell into dead silence. Li Kengqiang paused, then continued. Even before Bai Zhe gave birth, it had an agreement with him. If it couldn't overcome this crisis, it hoped Tang Mingxian would end its life before the situation escalated further. It was, after all, Great Xia's auspicious divine beast, and if something terrible happened because of it, it wouldn't forgive itself. At the same time, it was also repayment for Captain Tang saving its life. In the end he did it. After this incident, Tang Mingxian was stripped of his night watchman status for concealing critical intelligence and causing massive casualties. He was imprisoned in the abstinence hall for the rest of his life. Before leaving, he entrusted the baby Bai Zhe and his weapon to me, hoping I could raise it to adulthood. Everyone remained silent for a long time. Jiang Er carefully asked. Then, where is the baby Bai Zhe now? Li Kengqiang smiled. Him? He's already dead. Just as everyone's hearts sank, Li Kengqiang continued. However, you should have a chance to see him in a couple of days. He's also on this island. Lin Chia and the others froze in place. He's also on this island? Of course, Li Kengqiang spoke unhurriedly. That kid is the youngest commander-in-chief of the Night Watchmen in history, a monster who can arm wrestle with the main gods. You should have seen his photo at the Beijing headquarters. His name is Tang Yuxing. The fire crackled in the darkness as everyone's mouths uncontrollably fell open, their eyes filled with shock. Holy shit! Li Kengqiang held 2 fragrant fish skewers in his hand, walked through the dim forest, and finally stopped slowly at the top of the mountain. Under the star-studded night sky, a white-clad figure was sitting at the edge of the cliff, looking at the few silhouettes around the bonfire in the clearing below, lost in thought. I brought you one. Li Kengqiang sat down beside him and handed him a skewer. After all, you caught them yourself, you should at least taste it, right? And Qingyu's grilling skills are quite good. Tang Yuxing glanced at him, smiled helplessly and took the skewer. Why did you leave so soon? Why not chat with them more? If you want to chat, go chat yourself. Why do you always make me accompany them? I'm not their babysitter. Li Kengqiang took a bite of his skewer and spoke leisurely. Tang Yuxing opened his mouth as if wanting to say something, but after a while he just sighed. The two sat at the edge of the cliff, silently eating their skewers as silence fell over them. After some time, Li Kengqiang looked down at the mountain and suddenly spoke. I'm sorry. Tang Yuxing was slightly startled. What? You must have seen how these youngsters performed. Li Kengqiang smiled bitterly. If we had been like them back then, those tragedies wouldn't have happened. Uncle Li, you're overthinking it. Tang Yuxing shook his head repeatedly. If you all hadn't fought to the death, I wouldn't have been born at all. If you hadn't raised me during your time leading the special team, I wouldn't have been able to grow to that stage. Lin Chia and the others did very well, but history is history. Without you all, there would be no Tang Yuxing. Li Kengqiang didn't speak. He sat still for a long time, patted Tang Yuxing's shoulder and stood up to walk away. Try to spend more time with these youngsters. You're just too solitary. Li Qingqiang waved his hand under the night sky, his figure disappearing into the forest. Tang Yuxing remained sitting still, slowly closing his eyes. God's Psychiatric Hospital. Good evening, Director. Hello. Lin Chia, wearing a white coat, nodded slightly to the two attendants coming toward him and continued walking down the corridor. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he turned back and asked, "By the way, where is Supervisor Li?" "He's playing chess with the repeater." "Oh no, with Yorand in the courtyard," the attendant replied. "Chess? With Yorand?" Lin Chia was stunned for a moment, then turned and headed toward the courtyard. Playing chess was something that didn't match Li Yifei's style at all, and playing with Yorand was even stranger. Could it be that during his absence, Yorand's condition had improved? Lin Chia's brain worked rapidly as he quickly arrived at the spacious courtyard. It was late and the hazy moonlight fell on the courtyard's lawn, as if covered with a layer of gauze. Under the large tree in the center of the courtyard, two figures were sitting motionless at a small square table. One was Li Yifei, and sitting across from him was the kindly old man in cloud-like white robes, Yorand. Lin Chia silently approached the chessboard, not calling out to Li Yifei, but quietly standing behind him, leaning forward to look at the board. The board was a Go board and the pieces were Go pieces with black and white occupying most of the grid. Strangely, the way they were playing wasn't the Go that Lin Chia remembered, nor was it 5 in a row. The whole situation was a mess, seemingly without any rules. Li Yifei was rubbing his chin with one hand, frowning as if deep in thought. "Grandpa Yi, what on earth are you playing?" After a while, Li Yifei finally couldn't hold back and asked. "You're doing very well, child." Yorand smiled and spoke, raising his gaze to look at Lin Chia behind Li Yifei. Li Yifei also sensed something and turned to look behind him. Seeing Lin Chia in a white coat in the middle of the night, he was startled, his wrist jerking up and flipping over the board in pieces, scattering them all over the ground. "Chia? Why don't you make any sound when you walk?" Li Yifei recognized Lin Chia's face, patting his chest while complaining. "What are you two doing?" "Playing chess, of course." "What kind of chess?" "I don't know either." Li Yifei scratched his head. "Originally, Azu and I were playing 5 in a row here for fun, then Grandpa Yi came over. Azu and I played more than a dozen rounds and he just stood watching, not moving, occasionally blurting out, 'You're doing very well, child.' I thought since he's been watching for so long, why not let him play too? So I asked Azu to make room for him and Grandpa Yi sat down by himself." Li Yifei pointed at the scattered pieces on the ground and spoke with some frustration. "I thought even if the old man had never seen 5 in a row before, he's still the holy master of the Holy Church. After watching Azu and me play for so long, he should have grasped how to play, but unexpectedly he just played randomly." I was completely confused. From Li Yifei's words, Lin Chia understood what had happened. After thinking for a moment, he said, "It's fine, you go ahead with your business. I'll keep him company for a while." Lin Chia picked up the board and pieces, setting them back on the table, and sat down in Li Yifei's place. Regardless of whether Yorand was playing correctly, at least this was the first time since coming to the hospital that he had done anything other than overlooking. Perhaps this was a breakthrough in his condition. Lin Chia pushed the 2 bowls containing black and white pieces to the center of the table and politely said, "Please, you first." "You're doing very well, child." Yorand smiled kindly, reached out and directly took the bowl of black pieces, grabbed a handful and scattered them all over the grid in front of him. Lin Chia's mouth twitched. "Elder Yorand, that's not how you play this game. Let me explain it to you briefly." Lin Chia patiently began to explain the rules of Go to Yorand. After finishing, he added, "Do you understand?" "You're doing very well, child." "Good, I'm glad you understand." Lin Chia gathered up the black pieces from Yorand's side of the board, put them back in the bowl and made a please gesture. "You first, please." Yorand smiled and again grabbed a handful of pieces, scattering them on the board. Lin Chia. Lin Chia sighed helplessly, about to just play along with Yorand's random moves, when his gaze fell on the board and he suddenly froze. On the board, the messy black pieces were scattered randomly in front of Yorand with no apparent pattern. But strangely, both the number of pieces scattered and their positions were exactly the same as when Yorand had scattered the pieces the first time. Noticing this anomaly, Lin Chia immediately picked up the black piece again and placed it in the basket. "After you." The smile on Yolanda's face didn't fade in the slightest. He patiently continued to take black pieces from the container and scatter them on the board. The number and position of the pieces were still exactly the same as the previous 2 times. Lin Chia's expression gradually became serious. Once or twice might be coincidence, but with this third identical result things were certainly not that simple. Yolanda was the Holy Lord of the Western Holy Church. Lin Chia didn't believe that after explaining the rules once he still wouldn't understand how to play. Either the other party was purely trying to cause trouble or was trying to convey some kind of message. Elder Yolanda, what are you trying to tell me? Lin Chia asked. Yolanda's answer was again as Lin Chia expected. You're doing very well, child. Lin Chia sighed, no longer attempting to communicate with him. His gaze fell on the chessboard before him, carefully memorizing the position of each piece. After memorizing the pieces, Lin Chia got up to leave. He found Li Yifei and after thinking for a moment said, "When you have time, play chess with him more often." Li Yifei was stunned and said with a bitter face, "But his way of playing? Don't worry about whether he's playing correctly or not. After each game, mark down the positions of all the pieces on the board, keep them together and I'll look at them one by one later." "All right, no problem." As Li Yifei saw Lin Chia turning to leave, he suddenly said, "By the way, Chia, Gilgamesh said to find him when you have time." Lin Chia stopped in his tracks. He turned his head and asked puzzledly, "Gilgamesh? Who is that?" "Divine God's Mental Hospital. 2nd floor of the ward." Lin Chia walked through the corridor, past Nix's room 1, Merlin's room 2, Bragi's room 3, Sun Wukong's room 4. These rooms that were once brightly lit were now dark and silent. Their occupants had left one after another, leaving only the symbols on their door plates as proof of their existence. Lin Chia's gaze swept through each empty room, feeling somewhat hollow inside. Finally, he stopped in front of the 5th room that was still bright. Knock, knock, knock. He knocked lightly twice on the door and entered. This room was even emptier than he had imagined, with only a clean, tidy bed and a small chair. At that moment, a figure in a gray robe stood by the window with his back turned, hands behind his back, motionless like a sculpture. "Hello." Lin Chia stood at the door and tentatively spoke. The figure slowly turned around, looking at Lin Chia's somewhat awkward and confused expression, and sighed helplessly. "You've finally come, Lin Chia." "Gilgamesh." Lin Chia paused. "I have no memory of you whatsoever. I think it might be the star." "The side effect of star coin," Gilgamesh added. "I was present when you used it. Or rather, I was the one who told you to use it." Hearing this, Lin Chia relaxed slightly. Regarding the complete loss of memory about the patient in room 5, Lin Chia could only think of star coin as a possibility. But he was worried that this memory loss due to star coin as side effects might not convince the patient in this room. He didn't know what this patient's personality was like or whether they knew about the existence of star coin. If he accidentally angered them, things could become troublesome. Now that Gilgamesh had proactively clarified the situation, it was undoubtedly great news. "I'm sorry because I've lost all memories about you. I might need some time to relearn information about you," Lin Chia apologetically began. Gilgamesh was silent for a moment, then turned to retrieve several thick stacks of documents and books from under the bed, placing them in front of Lin Chia and hesitantly said, "Actually, I'm not very clear about my own past either." In the king's treasury, Gilgamesh had also used star coin to summon his past self and similarly lost most of his memories. Let alone Lin Chia, even he wasn't very sure who he really was. Lin Chia stood frozen. "These books, you brought them some time ago. Perhaps we can recover some of my past from historical records." "I understand." Lin Chia immediately sat cross-legged and took a book to read carefully. Then, as if remembering something, he looked up and hesitantly asked, "By the way, do you remember what illness you actually have?" Gilgamesh's face darkened. "I am not ill." Lin Chia. Gilgamesh paused, then added, "Or rather, my illness is almost cured." Lin Chia glanced at the void above Gilgamesh's head, where the progress bar stayed at 78%, and nodded thoughtfully. A treatment progress of 78% basically indicated that the most severe part of his condition had been resolved. "Do you remember what happened after you came here?" Lin Chia asked. "Yes." "Then tell me in detail," Lin Chia said solemnly. "Especially the parts related to me." Gilgamesh gave him a complex look and after a moment slowly began. The first time I met you was in. Late at night, the divine god's mental hospital had fallen into darkness, with only this room on the second floor of the ward still brightly lit. Under the light, two figures sat facing each other, quietly discussing something amidst thick historical documents and books. The sky gradually brightened. Lin Chia, who hadn't slept all night, finished washing up and returned to the open space with the other Nightfall team members. Wearing a floral shirt and toed sunglasses, Li Qiangqiang arrived punctually but leisurely, with his hands behind his back, like an elderly official taking a stroll in the park. Commander Li, the trial training is over. Are we starting formal training today? Chao Yuan couldn't help asking. Li Qiangqiang nodded, his gaze sweeping over everyone from behind his sunglasses. I saw clearly how each of you performed in the virtual reconstruction yesterday. If I'm not mistaken, someone among you has already touched the threshold of becoming humanity's ceiling. Hearing this, Lin Chia, by Li Pangpang, Chao Yuan, and Jiang Er simultaneously turned to look at An Qingyu, who smiled somewhat embarrassedly. Although Lin Chia was also at the peak of the Klein realm, it had been less than a year since he entered the Klein realm, and he was still some distance from touching that threshold. After all, even for him, the speed of advancement in spiritual power realms couldn't compare to the freak An Qingyu with his only correct solution.